Hello there. You're listening to Kevin Durgeon here on UK Health Radio. We are your global feel-good station, available online via the UK Health Radio app and also via Alexa. Thank you so much for tuning in and for listening to Acupuncture Point. Hello there, my name is Kevin Durgeon. I am a member of the AAC and I'm also a very proud member of the AAC's working board. I'm really pleased now to be joined by a colleague of very many years, Isobel Cosgrove. Now, Isobel has been an acupuncturist and a passionate advocate for supervision in the world of acupuncture for over 42 years. In addition, she is an experienced group leader and a trainer in the field of supervision and mentoring. Isobel was a founding member and also is a fellow of the British Acupuncture Council. And I'm really thrilled and very honoured that we're here today to talk. So first of all, welcome, Isobel.
Thank you, Kevin. It's lovely to see you again.
Really great to see you. So, Isobel, we're here today to talk about supervision. What does supervision mean in the context of acupuncture and acupuncturists?
Yes, I always think we should find a better word than supervision, because it is such a sort of super, it's sounding above and beyond and up, and it's not. It's about sitting in a room with another practitioner who's had probably a little bit more experience in the field of acupuncture. And you sit there in what we call a level relationship. No one is fixing anybody else, but the supervisor is providing a space where you can address issues that need discussion in your practice and in your professional life. So that's really what supervision is, and it can take place one-to-one, like Kevin and I at the moment. We could sit and have a supervision session like this, or in a treatment room, or we could form a group, and Kevin and I could be part of that group with two other people, and we could invite a facilitator to come in and allow us to work as a group of four to address the same issues in practice and in our professional lives.
Now, people often talk about supervision and mentoring. How does supervision differ from mentoring?
Well, this is my experience, and almost nobody agrees about it. Mentoring really is sitting in a room one-to-one and having someone hold a space for you so that you begin to look at practice issues. And I think it's how I use mentoring is to introduce people to the idea of getting support in their professional lives. So it's mostly a one-to-one situation. Supervision is a bit more organized. It could be more clinically addressed, or it could be group work. And so it's a bit of a broader spectrum, but really they're aiming at the same thing, which is to enable you and to empower you to be a better practitioner. Both of them are doing that.
Now, we're going to come on to how supervision can help people in a little while, but I would love to hear about what the world of acupuncture was like at the start of your career. And I'd love to hear about what you did and why you decided to introduce supervision to the world of acupuncture.
In the early 1980s, I was on the executive committee of what stood before the British Acupuncture Council and the AAC. So I was on the board of the TAS, the Traditional Acupuncture Society. That was 1980, 81, 82. And we were writing the Code of Ethics, from which all of the Code of Ethics have developed over the years. And the Code of Ethics was attempting to set boundaries and talk about ethical codes and how to behave as a practitioner. I then joined the faculty in Leamington and taught acupuncture for 10 years. Having written or helped to write the Code of Ethics, I then saw that practitioners and even faculty members were breaking the codes of ethics in their practice and in their professional lives. They were breaking codes and having affairs with clients and students. I could go on, but I won't, because it's boring and it's a bit shocking. But there was no real support for practitioners to look at the Code of Ethics and say, how do I make myself a good professional person? So people broke the codes, and I left just after 1990. I left, finished teaching, and started running supervision groups, having done some training myself, because I thought, we've got to change this. This is not going to work. Acupuncture and the whole of the profession is going to be damaged by this behavior. So that's what started.
Gosh, absolutely fascinating. And I'm sure that many people listening to this will be going, what do you mean ethics? Ethics within the world of acupuncture. So many people still have this perception that we just pop some needles in willy-nilly, and there isn't a really huge professional network and backdrop that underpins, no pun intended, what we do in our clinical space. Okay, so let's now move on to the process of supervision. How can supervision improve the practice of somebody who engages with it?
Well, it really depends where you are in your professional life. Clearly, or obviously to me, as you step out of college as a new graduate, it would be fantastic to be in a little group of people with someone facilitating and saying, let's talk about how to grow a practice. That is a moment which is a big moment of transition. And I think actually supervision is at its best at moments of transition. So that's when you graduate, that's when you've left to have a couple of babies and you're coming back into full-time practice. Maybe you've had a bereavement, or maybe you've moved and started to work somewhere else. Or actually, maybe you've started to run a clinic and you've got 10 people working with you. How are you going to do that? There are lots of ways in which professional life changes. And it's at moments like that when supervision is especially valuable, actually, but particularly as you start practice.
So could you give some examples of how supervision has helped some participants?
Yes. For example, I left teaching in Leamington and went to live in the mountains of Wales. And we ended up treating people, but mostly farmers with physical abilities that I knew nothing about. So I did two things. I arranged from a supervisor to come out to Wales, and I invited about a dozen practitioners to meet. And we all met and spent 2 days together, talking through our issues and having advice from our facilitator. So I did that. And I also traveled to London about 6 or 7 times a year to have supervision for myself and my husband about setting up clinics. And we set up 2 clinics. So we really needed supervision at that time. We were in the middle of nowhere. We were treating new conditions that we hadn't seen before. We even treated the odd pig and lamb. And we got some supervision from vets, by the way. But also, we needed to have contact with other practitioners. So a way of doing that was to invite people to our clinic, to have 2 days of meetings, and then to bring in a facilitator. So that's what we did. And it was so important. And our clinics flourished, and we had a really supportive network of people around us, actually. So it was good, yeah.
Now, you've mentioned supervisors and the role of a supervisor. I'd love to know what sort of training they have in order to help them know what support you need?
Yes, well, I did 3 years training with Spectrum in London. And basically it was about understanding the therapeutic relationship and understanding how to support others to improve what they offered in their treatment rooms. So having done that training myself, I then invited practitioners who were interested in having support. And what I did was I set up a group every 2 months, and people had to make notes in their practice weekly about issues which were occurring and which they weren't finding a way forward with. And then they would bring them to the group meeting. And my role as the facilitator was to say, welcome, say where you are today. So 10 minutes each person. And then we go through everybody's issue one by one. And each person brings the issue to the group. And I make sure that everybody in the group makes and asks enabling questions and comments. Nothing that's going to fix it and nothing that's going to criticize. So it has to be a trustworthy, safe, enabling environment. And that's my job as the facilitator, to maintain that throughout the whole session. That's my primary goal.
I imagine that there will be, for many practitioners, we spend all this time training, all this time, building up practices and connecting with people. I imagine that there may well be issues of shame at not succeeding, at not doing well, particularly in front of their peers. Mm. How do you encourage participants in your supervision groups to open up?
Well, I think it's because I say something about myself and my own practice and having needed support myself, and saying that if you can be willing to express some vulnerability in practice, then you open up for others to support and enable you. So there's a real, it's not so much shame as vulnerability, which people are worried about, isn't it? And because the groups themselves usually have some history. They may have trained together, or they may have been in a regional setting together. So they've known each other, but then when they come into supervision, they have to take more risks, as you suggest. And they have to risk being vulnerable and saying, I haven't got everything sorted. I am an ordinary human being and I've got some issues and I need some help with them. And then it's up to me to ensure that the setting in the room is supportive, safe, and enabling, and that there's no criticism at all or competitive comments being made, actually.
It sounds very, very much like the way in which I and probably you approach treatments. We were talking just before we did this recording about how much time we spend talking with our patients, and we do spend an awful long time talking, communicating, and actually rummaging around and trying to find out where the issues could be coming from. I just a few minutes before, I had a patient and everything was all fine on the surface, but it took a little bit more gaining trust and opening up, and then the issues began to rise up. And it's only at that point can you really help.
Exactly. And it takes a while for that to establish in a group. It doesn't establish overnight. That's why we have to meet. And when the group first meets, I never have long gaps because we need to make connection. And people stay in touch between groups on WhatsApp, for example. And they stay in an enabling sense of being connected. So connection is all important. Yeah.
No, wonderful.
You asked me about training, Kevin. Do you want me to say a little bit more about training? And
yes.
How I did my training, and then I ran groups for about 2 or 3 years. And in 1998, I set up the first training. And it was 4 long weekends, 3 days, 4 times from March to September at weekends. And with 12 people. So it was a small group working in the way that we've just been talking about. I introduced theory about how to become a supervisor in the mornings, and then we did groups in the afternoon. And everyone participated and learnt how to be a facilitator by actually doing it, having had the theory from the morning sessions and also from some reading that they did. And so the first group came out in '98 and went out and started holding their own, doing their own work. And we've been doing it every 2 years since then. We even did it in the middle of lockdown, by the way. We did it for the first time online, actually. We did meet online for the first time, yeah. But normally we meet as a group in London, or we've met in Bristol, and yeah. And it's really actually a very enriching experience. Even if you don't go on to become a supervisor immediately, it feeds in, as you say, it feeds into your own practice and in the therapeutic relationship itself. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, that's very similar to what we're doing in the treatment room.
Yes,
it isn't just about, you know, treating the bad back or the odd lamb or piglet that comes into our clinic. It's also about understanding where the underlying issues come from that keeps repeating in the lives of our patients. Okay.
The next supervision group will be starting in September 2022, and anybody who's interested can contact me or Sally Blades, and you will have the information. I'll send it to you so
Lovely.
that you can give it to your members, etc. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Isobel, talking to you about supervision and mentoring, it is clear that you are still, after 42 years, passionate about it. What maintains the spark of excitement within you?
Well, it's very interesting. 2 weekends ago, we had our annual, actually it's biannual conference. 1 year we do a training, and the year in between the trainings, we have a conference, and people come from all over the country who have been doing supervision. And it was so wonderful to sit in a room with people from all over the UK, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and reconnect. And a colleague came in from Germany. We had a speaker, Joan Wilmot, speaking in the afternoon. And it is that depth of connection and the safe, enabling environment which allows people, even in a big group like a small conference, to actually speak openly about their work. And it's just very enriching. It's very rich to have that depth of connection with colleagues. And that's what makes me want to keep on doing it, actually. Yeah.
Clearly, supervision and mentoring is very important for the practices of our practitioners, and also for the, actually it's very beneficial for the patients that our practitioners see. What, in your opinion, can and should acupuncture organizations be doing to enable their members to access this sort of work?
Well, this has been the biggest uphill climb, would you believe, for me. I've been lobbying since 1980 for the TAS, the British Acupuncture Council, and now the AAC, all of the organizations, to promote supervision. And unfortunately, the people running those organizations don't have supervision themselves and don't understand it and don't really know what it is. So it's been my job over 40 years to educate them. And this year at the conference I've just mentioned, I invited the person who's in charge of education at the BIAC to come and learn about it, because she wrote an article which said supervision is not for everyone. It was the most awful, 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 you know. And the BIAC actually has a register of supervisors, but they don't promote. So I think it's about getting educated And what I very much appreciate is that this is what we're doing today together.
Yes.
We're talking to each other, we're giving each other and exchanging information and handing it on to anyone who's going to watch the recording. Because if you don't understand the richness of it, you're going to feel, supervision, they're going to tell me what I've got to do. It's absolutely the opposite. Absolutely the opposite.
Well, the very, very good thing about what we're doing at AAC is that one of your proteges, Sarah Matheson, is a member, and she's a member of the working board and is absolutely pushing for supervision to be integrated. So we're actually working on a program where supervision is going to be offered to members as a member benefit.
Brilliant, so good. It just makes me so happy to hear that. And so that's what I would lobby for in your organization, and it's already happening. And I'm still lobbying for it with the folks back, blah, blah. Right. It's been an uphill climb, but it's really a pleasure to talk with you about it. And of course, I know Sarah. We've worked together for 40 years, Sarah and I. So, she's a real proper supervision expert, actually.
Yes.
So it's lovely that you're doing it.
She's going to be running some groups and offering some individual one-to-one supervision for members, just to get people so that they can actually understand what it feels like.
Yes.
What it feels like.
Yeah, that's what works. Take the risk, go in and find out that it's a rich and rewarding experience, actually.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Isobel Cosgrove, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Thank you.
You're really welcome. It's lovely to talk with you, Kevin.